Well, new at 11, it's a story that we report on all too often. A young boy or girl sexually abused by an adult. And many times the abuser is someone who has been convicted of abusing kids in the past. WSBT 22 fact finder Zach Crenshaw investigated the problem and what's being done to reduce repeats.
Or not done, Rick. Most people know about the sex offender registry and the 1,000-foot living restriction near schools. But do these conditions work? Our fact finder investigation found no matter what the restrictions, some offenders still find ways to abuse kids. It was in this Mishawaka home. Joseph Anderson Jr. engaged in oral sex with an 11-year-old. Anderson proudly showed graphic photos to a friend who called police. In the investigation that followed, police found more victims ranging from 8 to 16 years old. Boys and girls, there was more oral sex. Some of it photographed, some of it videotaped. All of them robbed of their innocence and scarred for life.
You don't get over being molested.
Anderson did all of this as a sexually violent predator on the registry for life because of 2 previous convictions in northern Indiana involving kids. So how did this happen? Could it have been prevented? First, some background. Anderson did have restrictions. Every 90 days, he updated his personal information with police. He couldn't live near a school or daycare, and officers checked on him every 3 months.
Basically, it's just a knock and talk.
Detective Sonny Oakley oversees all St. Joe County sex offenders.
We have 365.
When Anderson was caught, he was off the strictest part of probation, which would have prohibited all contact with kids.
Once they're off probation or parole, all that stuff is lifted.
We're bound by the laws of the state of Indiana. There's only so much that we can do. We have to play within the rules.
In recent years, those rules have changed. Indiana lawmakers like State Senator John Broden have put more constraints on child molesters.
We have created one of the toughest sex offender registry laws in the nation. But at some point, you do run in to the constitutional rights of an offender.
That's only if the crime is reported. Experts agree the majority aren't. And then they have to be successfully prosecuted, which is Ken Cotter's job.
Would I support more stringent laws on sexually violent predators? Absolutely.
The law is not a protection. The law is a punishment.
Detective Oakley speaks from experience, dealing with what Cotter calls high-risk offenders.
When I say high risk, I mean astronomically high risk.
Statistics are hard to pin down, but one study suggests the percentage of convicted sex offenders that will reoffend could be as high as 88%.
I think high-risk offenders in their lifetime will reoffend again.
They're just hardwired to be child molesters. That's what trips their trigger.
There's never going to be 100% success. But is there anything that can be done to prevent even some of these individuals from preying on our kids? One thought, more GPS and internet monitoring.
I support that.
I think that's something that we could do and should do.
Why can't we figure out a way to monitor the movement of the people who have offended children and are now released from prison and living amongst us again?
But there's a major barrier.
Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to do it?
That's very expensive.
Is the current system working?
Yes, but it needs improvement. We have to change and adapt to combat that and be able to monitor that, to be able to keep our children safe, because that's the #1 priority.
But if our children really are the #1 priority, the question is
this something that we should be spending our money on?
If I could save one child, it's worth it.
Joseph Anderson Jr. is in the St. Joseph County Jail right now, facing multiple child molesting charges. Police say they can't stress enough. Parents are the primary prevention method to keep these people away from kids. If you want to check online for any sex offenders who live near you, we have that information and extended interviews right now in the WSBT 22 News app. Zach Crenshaw, WSBT 22 News.